right, everyone. Hello and welcome to the League Community Podcast. I am your host, Patrick Scarborough, also known as Scarzard, and I'm here to talk to you guys today about the Ryze rework. You are not in a time machine. We have reworked Ryze yet again, and I have three individuals who worked in his development to come talk about it. So I have with me David Capurro, aka RiotRepertoir, who is here. Is it just repertoire? Do you care? Does it matter?
It's whatever.
Yeah, it's just okay. We just call him whatever, man.
One of the
Anyone
names,
out there. We also have Josh HUGEnFAST Smith, my favorite summoner name at Riot Games. How you doing, Josh?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm also good. Hey, cool. Usually people don't ask that. Now I feel real great. And then we have someone who I literally just met minutes before this podcast, the narrative writer for the Ryze rework, and I assume for part of Champion Update, John O'Brien.
Hello.
Yeah, we had to figure out how we were going to say that. I think John O'Brien sounds like it's the right one. So guys, we're gonna dig right into Ryze, and I kind of want a couple takes around here from all of you individually. But I think the biggest question when people saw this was like, wait, why didn't we just get one of these, right? So walk me through the process, at least probably starting with you, Decap, about why we felt this was necessary.
So from the gameplay side, I think with the kind of all the other updates we've done in the past, Ryze was like a not quite full project. We did like small amounts of visuals for him and small amounts of gameplay change and stuff like that. He got
kind of like like a not a new model.
He got a
right?
texture
like,
override,
like a
and he got some new spell effects, and it was like here's another partially updated Ryze, right? And I think finally we were like, okay, well, we're not really happy with his gameplay still, and he's still this weird blue thing. So like one final Ryze we work to end them all, that type of thing.
Right. And so, I mean, you mentioned the weird blue thing. How did that feed into you guys over here in your work? Is that how did you guys see Ryze coming into this project?
Well, from my standpoint, he was half finished because there was no narrative person to sort of finish out what needed to be done until I came on to Champ Up. So, yeah, I mean, for me, it was sort of. It was the difficult part was sort of finding like a nugget of personality in his old VO to work from, because there's really wasn't much.
Yeah.
And like the one thing I found that was sort of iconic.
I'm ready. Tell me what did you find, John?
The only thing I found that it was sort of like I could sink my teeth into was that let's go. And so I was like, okay,
yeah, same
well,
actually, yeah.
Let's expand upon that and figure out why, because that at least sounds like an emotion he is expressing.
Yeah. So, and that's the thing for those of you out there that have never played Ryze, like, let's be honest, Ryze came from the original 40 characters at a time when our character's voiceover was 7 lines. It's like you get a select, a taunt, a joke, like 3 attack lines and 3 move lines, and that's about it, right? And Ryze says stuff like zap and like don't hold me up, and you're like, all right, I guess he's impatient and rude. Like, what?
He still is,
yeah,
and he still says zap.
Yeah. Yes.
But
okay, good. That's what I needed.
We tried to make him, a character out of that, and yeah, the old VO was. Also just apparently done by some guy off the street that they pulled in and said, you say these words.
Yeah. Yeah. Come forth. Say these things. So
we got a real actor and expanded the personality a little bit and tried to round him out and figure out really who he is.
So this is a lot of soul searching for Ryze
now
during this period. And Josh, I know you, you try to oversee, you play a big part in a lot of the art decisions that happen during Champion Updates. I know specifically around Splash, right? Like, talk to me about when they're like, all right, we're going to Ryze Town, and you're like, oh man, like, well, like, what are the challenges? What are the things that you see when Ryze is the next project and that's the thing on your plate?
I was actually really stoked about it because I kind of had like Ryze blue balls, so to speak, because I started his Splash like 2 years ago.
Yeah, and then we were like, oh, we're not doing the whole thing.
Yeah,
stop.
I stopped. I stopped like midway through, and I was like really into it at the time. So getting to revisit that and actually have like a lot more stuff to sink my teeth into, so to speak, because by the time Splash starts, like a lot of work has been put into it already, and so there's a lot of things to be inspired by, and there's like a lot of meat that I can actually use to draw from. But I was really stoked about it because, like you said, he's one of the original 40, and like his model was terrible, and like we tried to hide it with like textures, and like he got his visual effects.
He's
which
like
were
one of
cool,
the
but,
last
like,
pizza feet, I think, that we still have in the game. Like, just
I think Mordekaiser is the last one.
He may
lone?
be, right. Like, I think we also tried to hide him with some textures and be like, it's not that bad, guys, I swear. But yeah, shout outs to those of you who've been playing long enough to know that like Sivir's feet used to be like larger than her head in terms of like model proportions.
So he still had those crazy proportions and really terrible animations, and I was just really excited we could find
Every
them.
auto attack looks like it's taking like years off his life. He's like, and this kind of thing, this little wimpy lightning bolt, things like that. So Decap, I don't know what really unqualified, lame designer did the last Ryze rework.
Yeah.
But tell me, you know,
It was me.
it was Decap. It was share with me your kind of overview, because you were talking about like, well, we still weren't really happy with this gameplay. Give me a little bit of the motivation behind that kit, and then tell me kind of what you thought and worked and what you thought didn't work, and what you wanted to take with you into the new world. Because it sounds like from all disciplines here that we're like, okay, well, we have to like struggle to find the thing we really like, and that's going with us to new Ryze.
Sure. So when making the last Ryze, the one that's on live until next week,
current
or
Ryze. I guess this is going to be out Wednesday, so it will not be current Ryze anymore. We can say old Ryze.
okay,
Yeah.
previous Ryze, the most previous Ryze. When making that one, we went with this idea of this passive that was like, oh, he's got these windows of power and stuff like that, but we put so much stock into like playing around it as the opponent and as Ryze, you know, that when it was effectively like executed on, he just killed you, and when it wasn't, or you beat him at it, you just killed him, right? And so it's like he just won or he lost, and there's not really much in between. We thought that in that version, like Rune Prison would hold like a lot of weight for like, why is he useful to a team and stuff like that. It's like, he can reliably root someone, and I made him reliably root someone a lot for a while. People don't like that very much.
A lot of people.
Turns out.
So you don't want to be rooted 5 times?
They don't.
Learning number 1.
Yeah, they don't like being rooted a lot, or several times, right? So,
but the kit now is very different, right? I mean, you still have Rune Prison, you still have Spell Flux, and then it bounces, but what it actually does and how you play it actually feels quite different.
The base kit is and isn't different at the same time. So the old version of Ryze was we had this idea of like, oh, he's got combo thing that he does, right? He's like a combo caster, right? But he wasn't really. He was a sequence caster, right? So it was like you press your buttons in this order, W, Q, E, Q, right? Once your passive's up, and you keep doing that over and over again to kill them, and it's the highest crowd control, it's the highest damage, and it's like there's like no optimizations other than that, right? And so with this new Ryze, you're always optimizing between your Q, which is like combos on myself, and E, which is combos on the opponent. You are optimizing for the most damage or the most AOE, or the most like the longest duration root, the most shielding or the most movement speed. But you're not doing them all at the same time, so there's no like, you don't like unlock the master code and then like
then
you faker everybody like we saw in the finals, you know, and it's just like, oh right, it's just like when you do it right, it's the best. That's the one, right?
You don't really like practice Ryze as much as you practice like that muscle memory, and you just try to do that over and over.
Right, you practice WQEQ on the old Ryze, and then on this one you practice like, oh, am I trying to live here? Am I trying to kill them right now, or am I trying to like, you know, like bounce these things out there, or that type of thing, as opposed to like, just, am I in my passive? Okay, do the thing I've always been trained to do here.
Right.
Know? And
so guys, how much inspiration for work on like the narrative and art side came from the kit, and how much did the kit come from this and vice versa? Because I want to step back and explain for people who maybe haven't listened to one of these before. What we have assembled here is, and we love to do it, I love to do it, we call it the old DNA pod, right? Which stands for design, narrative, and art. It's very cute that it lines up that way. But you know, for a lot of champions in the past, it's like, well, you kind of start with one, and then narrative comes up with a really good idea. It's like, oh, well, he's going to transform into a bigger Yordle, and then August will be like, oh, and then we got to have him have a rage bar, and we got to go back and forth like that, right? So tell me a little bit of how he got to the state that he is now when he realizes, okay, well, he's going to stay combo-y, right? He has this crazy ult that we'll talk about in a bit, right? How do you get to the personality that you were talking about, you try to pull out of that?
Well, you guys had already made the kit because it seemed like the thing you were waiting
One
for.
of the earliest things we figured out was his sort of global quest, right? And his purpose in collecting his world runes. That was something that I know Decap was sort of, simmering on when you were coming up with the concept for the kit. Am I correct in saying that the idea of a teleport was somewhat inspired by that?
The ult definitely came from the story, I think, in this case, and not the other way around. I think we had sort of the base kit, which is like he throws blue magic around. Yeah. And that's going to be true. And then we wanted like something unique that he does, and
it doesn't just feel like a steroid.
Yeah,
right?
in the past was just like here's some stats and you kill people better.
Yeah, sometimes
Even
it's spell
better.
vamp, sometimes it's AoE, sometimes it's both.
And we had this story where he's like this world traveler and he's going around and collecting these things, and it's like, well, how does he get around? And it's maybe we can just do this thing, right? And so,
because I remember at the time of the original season 1 cinematic, his ult gave him an absurd amount of move speed, and the video is just Ryze running. It's him running from one end of Summoner's Rift to the other end of Summoner's Rift.
Right, it's like kind of the thing that people like actually even like think about when they think of Ryze. They're like, it's like the blue guy in League that runs, right? And it's like,
isn't he always? He's running from Nocturne. He's running.
What is he in the Olympics or something? Like he's not a runner, right?
So tell me about the creation of Olympic runner, world rune hunting guy, because I have kind of gotten the cliff notes of this, but break it down for me. Who is Ryze?
Well,
Mr.
he still is in a hurry.
Let's go. That's
because I think his mission sort of demands that he be in a hurry, and he has this heavy responsibility weighing on him, and if he fucks it up, then Runeterra dies. So no pressure. So it's not really in his gameplay so much, but it is in his VO, just the sense of urgency that he is experiencing.
Yeah, which was I have to say, as a longtime player of League, I got used to it. I liked it, but it was actually very stark, right?
Yeah.
To go from a different actor, almost a completely different style,
right?
7 lines to our new treatment, which is like 15 minutes of voiceover, right? Like really deep background. But tell me about this mission. Go deeper on this and tell me, like, how did we come up with the idea that this guy was going to be this way?
Well, to be honest, he's a character that a lot of teams at Riot have been developing stories for a long time. So we were able to draw on some of that. And so the stuff with him hunting down world runes was kind of already developed. And I sort of, put that into his lore and was able to draw out a bunch of things that I think he might say when he's fighting someone. It's this thing, it's basically what he'd rather be doing than fighting on Summoner's Rift, I think, is saving the world. Keep the world from him.
So is he like generally annoyed when you're playing him in game? Is he just like, come on, man, I gotta go to a meeting?
He doesn't have time for friends.
Right. I think there's a piece of him
I need to tell that to someone the next time. They're like, do you want to do something? I don't have time for friends. I'm sorry.
Well, I think he would really like to be part of humanity and kind of do things that people do, but he's not able to. And a part of him really kind of regrets that he can't do that. But at the same time, he knows that he has to do this because otherwise there won't be any humanity. So
yeah, it's like maybe that's a thing he can go join one day off in the future.
Exactly.
Or something like that. So Josh, we were talking in the hallway a little bit about and it sounds like John's shedding light on this too. It's like, well, you got a lot of people who kind of have their hands in Ryze and I mean, he's been an iconic character of ours for a long time, right? He was on our loading screens. He was in our client. He's the name of one of our bosses, right? It's like Ryze is kind of everywhere here at Riot Games and in League of Legends. So when you're handed that and you were working on something for him so long ago, what are some of the things you guys run into that aren't actually that easy? Because it feels like sometimes these champ ups, they're a slam dunk. It's like Scion. It's like it takes us a long time to get there, but we know that what we're going to come up with is going to be such a dramatic improvement. We're really happy with it, right? With this, it feels like, you know, God, I don't even know what it must be like.
I think one of the main challenges with Ryze, especially from an art standpoint, was that because other teams were utilizing him and making content with him, that in some ways defined our space that we could work in, which is to say that we couldn't sort of nuke him from orbit and do something, not to say that we necessarily would in this case because of who he is, like as kind of a mascot of the game, but there was parameters set because he was being leveraged by other creative teams. And I think it turned out for the best that way because we were able to sort of use their work as like a springboard. And I find creative situations that are like really that have strict boundaries to be the most interesting. And so we were in a situation where like, okay, he's still fucking blue or purple.
Yeah,
he's got these
he
like
is of a certain hue.
He's got these weird tattoos. He's got a book. He's got a scroll. We have to decide like what's important. Like where is his power coming from? How does it manifest? And like which things do we sort of focus on and try to make them cool without like drastically changing the character, right? And I think for the most part we succeeded in making him feel like a cool character, even though he's like on paper the same, right? Like if you were to write a description of him visually, it would be basically the same as the old one.
Yeah,
but it's
an
actually
old blue purple man with a book and a scroll seems impatient, kind of rude.
Right. But I think the execution here is what sells it.
Yeah. So, go for it.
Oh, I was just gonna say it was that way on the narrative side too, was trying to fit in the parameters of what everybody else was doing. It's a unique champion because although not that many people are playing him, he's very important to League. And so
he's definitely important to the pro scene right now. The people he is I feel like he has kind of always been a very high visibility character no matter what, right? You know, despite popularity or skill curves or something like that, there's always going to be some 19-year-old Korean boy who absolutely disrespects everyone when they press the buttons the correct way.
Yeah.
So do you find that a really challenging part? I kind of want to ask you this is a personal question, John. Do you find that like, do you welcome that as a creator, or do you actually, you know, was it hard for you when it's saying like, hey man, write a story, but like write our story, but write part of the story for us? You know, it's like, hey, well,
it's super hard, to be honest. It's really, really hard when everybody has a opinion on a champ. I would to be honest, I would much rather do the champs that nobody gives a shit about.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, it sounds like that's on Champ Up's plate moving forward.
Yeah, that is what we do.
You guys normally it's like, you know, it's like Yorick and you know, old Tarek and stuff, where it's like, you know, try to protect this one thing people love. Where I think Ryze is, at least it feels like we've kind of made it a little difficult for ourselves in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of people to satisfy on Ryze, I think, and a lot of expectations.
Yeah. It seemed like, from my perspective too, a lot of the challenges you were facing, John, was the fact that this character in the sort of pantheon of League characters in Runeterra, he has a very important role, like in the global story, in the history of the world, right?
Yeah, like he might be one of the main characters if there were, you know, it's like if we had like League of Legends, the TV show, it like opens with Ryze trying to, you know, do something with a scroll, and you're like, whoa, that's like one of my ways I come to understand League of Legends.
Yeah.
Decap, how much of this, did you feel any of this pressure yourself? That it's, because I know part of this is like personal mission and team mission, right? It's like, let's go back, let's fix the things we don't like, let's replace it, and then on top of that, you know, you got to be in stand-ups and meetings with these guys where they're like, oh, we're kind of being told a lot of stuff about what Ryze has to be. Does any of that pressure get to you when you're designing a champion?
Maybe a little bit. I think I definitely feel sort of their pain. Like I think John comes into, you know, every other stand up and is like, oh, there's this new thing that someone like wants. It's just can we
the tattoo on his left arm needs to specifically be of a snake. We gotta have
joke,
a reason.
but we went back and forth on like what exactly does his accent sound like? Like it needs to be perfect, you know, on the VO, and it's like that took like weeks for some reason, because like literally everybody is like so opinionated for some reason on the character, right? I think I'm
on this one particularly.
Right. There's like a million ways you can fuck it up, and like one or two ways you can get it right, you know? So it's like, well, don't do this big ass checklist of things but make sure you definitely do these things, you know? And it's like, well, what's left that John can do?
You know, we actually had to re-record him, I don't know if that's something. It's a little tidbit of
Oh yeah, well,
secret
to
information.
my
for
knowledge,
everybody.
we do that a couple, or we have done that a couple times, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
we have a character that is coming out, the next champion. I know has had some interesting VO decisions, something that I'll probably be talking about with them in a couple weeks here. I know Tarek, I believe, also went through a lot of revisions to be like, oh man, you got to sound like really kind of like stoic, but then like not too not expressive, right? And there's a lot of things like that.
You're charming, but you're an outsider. So
Yeah, you really want to hit on this person,
Right.
but you don't want them to know you're interested. You're like, okay, that's Which is all stuff like I do some voice acting as well, and I when the first time I heard Ryze, I actually had a lot of respect for it because it felt like I now the more I've listened to it, I think it is correct. I think it is like, yeah, the Ryze that we want long term in our game should probably be this character, and he should, he wants to sound a little like frayed and abused like Yasuo, like he's seen the bad side of things, but you still want to get the sense that he actually cares about getting this job done, right? And it's not like, all right, I guess I'll find a rune or something, whatever. He does actually really care about it a lot.
yeah, he does.
So I kind of had to reserve some space for it. I want to talk about this ultimate because there are a couple things at play here, and people who have listened to some of the podcasts I've had with designers know that there was a certain time in our life cycle as a company where we were just like, make a champion, now make another champion, now make another champion. And that's not exactly a bad strategy, but I think the big one that we found that really ended up holding us back is you had like Jarvan, Aurelia, Renekton all came out within a very short period of time, within the span of like a month or 6 months or something. And while they had, it's like this one's got a stun and that one's got a stun, but it's a different kind of stun. Like we ended up with the fighter problem that now a lot of people in Champion Update, the roster guys are trying to fix. It's like, well, a lot of these guys are too samey, right? So it felt like then, this is kind of history for those of you guys who don't know. Then we were like, okay, well now let's say it's about, we got to give these characters reasons to be picked, really big strategic wins. And so how much does something like this, like tell me just what is the process? How do you arrive to this conclusion? Because when I first read that email, Decap, I was like, oh, here it goes. It's going to be crazy.
The conclusion, this is the ultimate we're going to use?
Yeah, like how do you reach that?
Okay, so first we thought it made sense because it's like, how does this guy get around the world? It's part of like his character, right? So it's like, oh, powerful mage guy, he can probably do portals, right? That makes some sense. And then from there it was like, okay, so if we're trying to make it unique or make the character unique, right? There's a bunch of ways to go about doing that, and this is one of them. We have to make this spell like somewhat different than other ones that would be like kind of like it, right? Like Tom Kenchel comes to mind, and we wanted to make it like not like Twisted Fate ult, right? Because that would be better because it takes more people, right?
Exactly.
And so we kind of just went through a bunch of different efforts to be like, oh, what if it's really short range? Like we had some versions where it was like Riftwalk range, or not current Riftwalk, but like old Riftwalk range. Like, and what does that look like?
It goes over like a wall, but just one.
Right,
Yeah.
and then what if it's full global, and what if it's super fast or it takes a super long time, and like what are the things you can use it for, right? And we sort of, I think, rested on this version that we have now, which is supposed to be like usable within a fight, and that it differentiates from Tom Kench's especially in that way, where like Tom Kench gets interrupted by damage and like goes really far and that type of thing, and this one is much more about like, oh, like we're losing, like put the portal behind us and get out. It's not super long range, but it's enough to get away, right? And then or in the other case, it's like, oh, we're winning, like jump behind him and
go chase down the guy
finish
who's
him off,
escaping, right?
Yeah,
like
so.
let's jump in their path and try to pincer them out.
Yes, I mean, so that was how we differentiate, I think, this spell, right? And there's a lot of different ways to make the character unique. Like I think the most strategic thing he does is I can move a bunch of people on my team to a spot like very quickly, right? But he like, you can also differentiate them by just like, how does it feel to play the character? What do you have to do to master them? Like, what are people doing to play against and stuff like that? And that's more in the base kit and whatnot.
Yeah, I think this is something a lot of people don't think about, but we have like joked about over the years or mentioned, like Wukong's ult Cyclone and Zax's ult Let's Bounce are functionally the same ability. It's like they both give you ramping speed, they both affect a similar area, they both displace you when they're used, right? And yet that is one that until like a developer says it, I've never heard players talk about, right? Because they'll be like, Diana and Akali are similar because maybe they're assassins, they dash at you or something, right? But it really goes to show that theming and as well the rest of a character's kit does a lot to make you feel like they're different, even when you could one-to-one say like, that character's got that move and it feels like this one, right? Because Zach diving in over many different walls where Wukong maybe has to be very tricky about how he gets in with decoy, feel like different experiences. I feel like this is one where feedback from the community was very split on like half people were like, oh boy, it's one of these again, right? And the other half were like, no, this looks insane. This looks like a different kind of insane I want to play with. And I know some of the crazy things that you can do with it, like you can open the portal and Sion can ult through it, and then now Sion's in a different direction. Hopefully, does that stuff still exist? Have you guys made a call?
Pretty much all of them still exist except for the capture ones. We didn't think those ones were
like
worth
Skarner grabbing you.
So Skarner got Tom Kent. You can't like capture an enemy into the portal and take them. It just we kind of felt at the end of the day that the net fun created in the game was not as high as like the amount of frustration that is created for like the person who gets dragged 3,000 units into the turrets or the fountain, right, and just automatically dies. It's like yeah, cool, you made a teamwork play, but they just literally auto died, right?
Yeah, I think that honestly, the more that I think about it, and I think you guys have all kind of done a really good job with this now that I'm really in this mindset of, I think designers often reduce an abilities function to just what it is, and they'll be like, oh, what's Ryze ult? It's like, oh, it's teleport, it's team teleport, right? But him opening an actual portal, and I love who did the animations on this new character, on this new Ryze?
Paul Jarvis.
Yeah, dude, shout outs to Paul Jarvis,
because
that
really
ult
good.
animation looks so sick. Like I think that, like you said, it's opening a portal, right? And when the enemy team sees that, they're like, what the hell is coming out of it right now, right? And then there's the Mecha Zero Scion bus that just steamrolls through your team, right? Like that, it has an element of wizardry and mage stuff that I feel like we don't really actually have a lot in our game. And I think this was maybe this is part of the World Rune cage you guys were put in, but Ryze's source of power, right, I think is like, God, I have to imagine that's been a conversation, because for so long it's been like he has lightning, he does lightning from his hands, but then it's like, no, it's arcane, but what does that mean, right? Like so How much of that informed or was informed by decisions that you guys made?
Quite a lot of it, actually, because there was actually work that was done on Ryze that was never released or finished for one reason or another. And he had like a partial animation set where he really used his book a lot, and he was like drawing energy out of it and pushing it through. It was kind of inspired probably by his old splash art where he's like clearly drawing like runic.
Oh yeah,
magic
dude.
out
There's
of his
also
book.
the Twist of Fate one, right? Because he's like, he's got like he opens the book and Nocturne's stuck in there, and he's like flipping through all the pages, and the root lasts like 10 seconds.
Right.
I love how people are like, they would never make his root last that long, and then the last three words like, there was a clue. It was there all along. That was the thing.
And then there was ideas about how to use the scroll like more exclusively, and him actually like opening it in the game and doing shit with it. But
it was kind of a clusterfuck.
It was,
and the scroll. So we had to kind of simplify that, I know.
Yeah. And again, sort of using other teams' work as like a springboard and collaborating with them, we came up with just the simple idea that like the power comes from within him, right? Like these tattoos,
It was in you all along.
these tattoos in some way or another are formed by the world runes, and like he in some way sort of is affected by that intense power, and that is something that he can channel through his body. And once we decided that, like his animations started to really fucking kick ass, and in the game, like he feels like he's actually using effort to cast spells, which makes him really fun to play.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
there is a video that you guys will all see. I believe it's like it'll be on Facebook or it'll be on Twitter. You'll see it. It's like a quick video that's like, hey, this guy's reworked. He's out now, and it looks so cool. It is literally just him pressing all of his buttons in sequence while like running, and I looked at it and I was like, oh, I can't do that. Right? And it's like, no, it's just Q. And it's like his running animation looks so intense, and then he just hurls these things, and I'm like,
Yeah.
it looks like Azir level difficulty, and I'm
Yeah.
like, it really is just probably 4 button presses. It's probably not that hard.
So
but he looks intense.
He kind of at that point became a mage in like the purest sense of the word, where like this is just innate power, and he just like uses his body to channel it, and that informed a lot of work going forward.
A lot of it's talent. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not learned skill. It's just he was born like that, right?
Yeah. So, well, okay. Tell me about these tattoos for a little bit. Is it like a dragon shout? You just find the tattoos and they just come onto your body? Does he have to inscribe himself? Was he born with the tattoos to a tattoo people?
He was not born to them.
Okay. Okay. There's one has been eliminated.
He may have actually had. I don't know. Do we have an official story on this?
Yeah. Is there even?
I don't think
Dude,
we've
this is your
actually
court.
spelled
Because
this
I'm
out.
saying, yeah, my headcanon now is that he
they-
finds them and he's like, well, I can't put them down anywhere. So it's like Memento. It's like he has to put them on his own body because that's the only
They
way.
are not the actual runes, but they may work in concert with them somehow. They may be sort of.
Oh man, dude,
a
we're setting our game
way
up for
that
like a
he
prophecy now. It's like
expresses his runic magic through his tattoos in some way. They're sort of conduits, I think.
that's
Is-
I'm sorry. That sounds like the most Los Angeles thing I've ever heard.
Hooray!
For you talk to someone on like Venice Beach, and he's like, "Yeah, I just express my magic through my tattoo.
Yeah, man.
I have a lot of natural talent, and I just, I figure it's really
You want to
for
buy
me
a bracelet?
it's for me to be one with the world's runes. That's the pool party Ryze skin idea for you guys right there. It's beach bum LA vegan Ryze. That's what he's doing.
Yoga mat on his back.
Yeah, whoa. Okay, this is it. For people listening, when this happens a year from now, you know where this idea
Nice.
came from. So
So
go for it.
so we boiled it down to the scroll is something that he uses to hide the runes.
Okay.
That is
That's
as
why it's like on
explicit as
him
we
at all
want to be right
times.
now.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So we're
but if anybody finds the scroll, everyone is screwed.
Yeah.
okay. So
Not finds it, but if they take it from him,
okay. So we won't, I won't go deep into that box, but it sounds like there's some real like Raiders of the Lost Ark, stuff going on where
it
it's
will
like
melt your face off. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I'm not gonna be specific, but you will die a horrible death if
Right,
you read it.
right.
Stop reading it. Okay, so yeah, I don't know. It feels like with most champion updates, I'm going to keep going back to the ones because this does feel very different, right? We have the roster work, which is very light on art and gameplay, but it's meant to make them more distinct. We have Tarek, right, which is like completely new everything from the floor up. It feels like Ryze are we targeting a certain kind of player? Is there like who is the audience for Ryze? Is this old Ryze players? Is this people who wanted this skill fantasy but never felt like it was there? Like who are we really trying to hit and say this is the Ryze for you? This is the person that we want to make this for.
I think with the level of familiarity we went with on the kit, Ryze enthusiasts should be pretty happy. Like people that have been Ryze enthusiasts. I think this is a good probably compromise between like the old passive 2 passives ago.
Yeah.
And then now the last passive where it was like you cast 1,000,000 times in 4 seconds, and then the old one that was like you cast pretty quickly. In this one, this one's kind of like
you cast moderately fast,
right? Yeah,
all of the time.
That
rather than
was
a crazy amount within a really short window.
That's exactly how we described it. So I think those players will be happy, but we're also hoping that just sort of the excitement that the R brings and it will generate new Ryze players and that type of thing, because he's not really doing super crazy things with his base kit. It's like sometimes he's dealing damage and sometimes he's rooting you, and then sometimes he mixes those things up a bit, right? But
he can get a shield, I think.
He can get a shield sometimes,
so,
and sometimes
who
he goes
knows?
fast, right? So but the R is like, yeah, it's like I blink you and me somewhere, right? But what you get out of that really changes a lot based on who you blink somewhere with you, or if you even go at all, right? And so
now tell me, because there was a time where I walked by you working as Decap is known to do. He's growing up to become a specter of the office of Riot Games, and you'll always see him leaned back in his chair making something insane in his lab. And I walk by and he just tells me to look at this, and he has an Azir and a Heimerdinger next to him, and he ults, and it brings all of their soldiers and turrets with him and the Azir wall.
Yeah.
So where are we on that? Is that dream still alive? Did you make a call? Because that increased it expanded my mind to the wonder of what this character might do.
Yeah, the rule we sort of went with on that, and there's a few exceptions, is that if you can if Ryze can click on the unit and like get a health bar in the top left of the screen or whatever, if he can select them, he can teleport them.
Okay.
If it's a minion. If it's a champion and they're like untargetable or whatever, they'll come along for the ride anyway. So he can Zhonya's or get Bard ulted by an ally or
and he'll still go. He'll just be golden when he gets there.
Yeah, I mean, one of the coolest things you can do is like your whole team sits on top of Ryze. Ryze starts ulting, Bard ults your whole team, and then you're just all untargetable and go together, right?
Holy shit! My world has just been transformed. I need to do that now.
And that's like, I think, as much as I could then kind of coming down to the wire and being like, okay, well, we got to make this thing sane now, right? And I was like, okay, well, I want to like preserve as many of those types of things as you can do. And I wanted in general, like when people were like, oh, but does this thing work, right? But yes, it works. Like they all work.
All of the things that make you excited to think about with this move,
yes,
they all work and they are all a thing.
That's like where the fun in the spell is, right? It's like who am I bringing with me? Like what do they do that's cool when they show up in a place they're not supposed to be able to have access to and that type of thing.
This story always reminds me of Syndra's Force of Will when it was being made, it's such a simple concept now that it's been in the game and we've played with it, right? But when we're first making it, it's like, okay, so she picks up her orbs and she can get the wolves, and everyone's like, can she get blue and red buff? Yeah. What about Tibbers? Yes. Heimer turret? Yes. Right? It was like try to say yes as much as possible. Yeah. So we are wrapping up here because I know you guys are all hardworking folks that have to do things. John's like,
folks that have to do things. Yeah.
But as we're kind of winding down in these last little bits, I want to get from you guys this kind of the more freeform section. Tell me, like, what are some Ryze stories? Like, I want to know from this process, right? Because I think a lot of us will see the champion out, right? You know, people who are listening to it are able to play this right now, and they will come to view this character as the sum of its parts. They will be like, oh, he's got these abilities, he's got this stuff, makes me feel this way, but I know there's a whole lot that goes on behind the scenes and a lot of experiences that you guys have when it comes to developing and making stuff that get lost to history. So if you have any of those stories, I want to know what was it like to work on this character for you?
This was all done on a pretty short schedule, we should add.
Yeah.
It was not ideal at all. But sometime back in January, we just decided, hey, let's stop working on what we're doing right now, which we're way ahead of schedule on.
Yeah.
And let's get Ryze
Secret
done.
thing, hint, hint.
I think it was even later than that, to be honest. I remember we were about to ship, we were like 3 patches off of mages, and Ryan, our PO, was like, hey, do you think we can get Ryze in for the mage update? And now, of course, I was like, yeah. No. The answer was no, actually, it turns out. Because I think that actually would have killed John
Nice job,
and Josh.
DK.
Well, at the very beginning, it was like a roster project, right?
Yeah, it was, and then but the team was like, well, we could do like these cool things if we put a little more time into it, right? And I was, well, yeah, we could.
The old scope creep is what it sounds like.
It was a really good choice because we probably would be
doing this again,
heading ourselves, for next year's Ryze update otherwise. But I think
we're finally breaking the cycle, maybe, of not doing the yearly Ryze update.
That was like literally like one of the goals. It was like, what are the goals for like Ryze? It's like blue man makes sense, and it was like combo caster, and then the third one was like no more Ryze reworks, right? And like those were literally the 3 things, right? And then we kind of went from there, and it was like also you have 3 months, right? And that may sound like a lot to someone that doesn't work here or isn't familiar with that, but I think we spent a year on Tarek, and we'll spend a year on Yorick or something like that.
Yeah.
And we did maybe 4 months on Ryze.
Yeah. And that's the thing I think a lot of people don't see is because Champion Update is actually a pretty big team.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of teams working on different things at all the same time, right? So to try to fit someone in like this it's not like it delayed Yorick, for instance, which we've been open about is the next one that you guys are going to see. It's not like, oh, my thing was pushed back, right? But it does mean that in the cycles of like this team's far out thinking about this one's thinking about this one, it felt like this was really you know, it was really a big ask, and I gotta say, with what is going into the game, I'm a little terrified, but the good kind of terrified. I'm excited. I think you guys all did a really good job in terms of making the guy something that, you know, I think we will hit the No More Ryze reworks. You know, that's my feeling at least.
I'm really glad that it's finally out there and he's finally reworked. Like, I would not have changed any I would not have wanted to delay it any further, I suppose. And a lot of it too was like, from the artist perspective, I mentioned that there had been work that was done that was never released, right? And so there was a certain motivation on our part to sort of like actually release this shit and get it out there.
Yeah, like,
and like get it out of the drawer.
Finish it. Don't let, you know, because when you guys are talking about, it's like, well, what do we have in the tank? It's like, I've got some old models for this thing and some concepts for this champion, and then like half of the art assets for a Ryze rework, and you're like, you know, it's like you don't want your messy room.
We ended up not even using like I think almost all of them. Like we basically used nothing, and Josh didn't mention it, but he had to like come up with like concepts for like all of Ryze's skins too. Like Ryze is one of those old champions that like he has so many skins now, but like they were like, what are they? It's like American Ryze is one of them, right?
Yeah,
and it's like pirate.
Which
Ryze.
I love the I've been waiting to tell you. I love the splash art. I'm a splash art enthusiast, as you know, but I love the Uncle Ryze splash art.
Yeah,
it's like in a bar. It's like people are fighting or something, and he's a poster. Yeah, that's I think I love. Since we started and we finally have the bandwidth to do the big splash drops, I love the kind of creativity that you guys get when it comes to figuring out how to preserve a lot of the old person. You know, Armor the Fifth Age, Pink Tarek, right, is beloved by most people, with everyone taking selfies of Tarek. Like that, it cracks me up every time I think about it. But I think we are probably just about out of time. So I gotta say, guys, thank you so much for coming and being here. And thank you to everyone out there that is listening. So Decap, Josh, John O'Dine O'Brien. I'll never forget it now. I'll know until my last days that summoner name. But
it fits my play style.
is that true? Is that so I guess by summoner name, you have a large repertoire of champions. You play big characters and dive into the fray, and you die a lot.
That's true.
Does that sound like the playtest? Is that an accurate spread? Okay. I was going to be like, I know you to be a Scion and Blitzcrank player, so this sounds like huge and fast. But all right, cool. Well, so to everyone out there, thank you again for listening. This has been the League Community Podcast. If you enjoyed listening to this and you want to listen to ones like it, go ahead and subscribe either on our SoundCloud or on our iTunes or Stitcher, wherever it is that you're listening to this. And go ahead and leave us a comment. Tell us what you liked, what you didn't like, what you want to see more of in the future. And we will be back next time with the next champion update. But in reality, it'll probably be the next champion or the next rundown. I will see you guys next time. But until then, let's go.
Let's go.
There you go. All right. See you guys.